Welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we cut through the bullshit
Greggy,
so we can get naked.
you can't say that.
Why not? How would you say it then?
Well, maybe more like, welcome to Undressing Intimacy, where we undress emotionally so we can undress physically.
That's exactly what I said. Not sure what the problem is. Here we go. Number 7.
7 is heaven.
All right. Well, I've been thinking about this a little bit. It seems like I've kind of been on the hot seat lately in these podcasts, talking about my transformation and what took place.
I like you in the hot seat.
I know you do, but I think I like to share too. So I don't want to take the hot seat up all by myself. So I was thinking maybe we throw you in there and see what happens. What do you think?
Oh me, oh my. Let's do it.
All right. I think we should talk a little about what happened to you. We know that there was a period of time when I finally said, hey, listen, I'm going to go take care of my stuff. I got a lot to go take care of. And I am going to stop chasing you and torturing you. And you can go figure out what you need to go figure out, and we'll get back together.
Yep.
But I think that figure out part's always been a mystery we've never revealed. You want to talk about it today?
Sure, let's do it.
Just tell us a little bit of the story about afterwards, and maybe we'll go through some of the things that you really worked on and some of the thoughts that you had in your mind that were keeping you from really being sexual or understanding your sexuality.
Well, I think even before you did that, I had already started working on understanding what my beliefs were. A lot of them were framed in religious / purity culture. And so I really ascribed to believing that it was my job to be very modest so that I was never tempting anyone, that it was my job to service, to be the agreeable, kind, peaceful woman, like not be conflictual, not rock the boat, be the support staff that made sure everything ran perfectly and beautifully, to be the mom. And I think I had the idea that I could be the girlfriend before we got married, but I think once we got married, that idea of being the girlfriend or being playful really switched into a role of like domestic responsibility.
Now let's give a little background about who you are. You ready to be vulnerable?
All right. I don't know about
I
this.
found a very beautiful woman, but her beauty was not the only thing I found when I discovered Amy Lou. I found a very, very intelligent woman, succeeded in everything she put her mind to. She was top of her class in high school. She only got B's in religion classes at college.
Hey now.
I love to say that. And she really was driven to succeed and could do that very much. She was an accomplished pianist. All the things that I felt I wasn't in some ways. But this was the thing that just shocked me most. Here is this beautiful woman, and the more I get to know her, there's so much more about her that's just amazing. And that's kind of the stage that I found you in, is that you had been successful in life and everything you put your mind to, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I was pretty hardworking. I still am hardworking, so I don't want to say that past tense. But
sometimes overworking.
Yeah, I did tend to overwork. I did tend to be very driven, very motivated, very organized, very structured. Also, though, I did like to play and have a good time and, have fun and things like
Sometimes it's
that.
still shocking that I ever succeeded in convincing you, but anyways.
That's a fun story. We'll have to share our
We'll have to
dating
share it
story
one day.
sometime.
But I think all of this led into what you were set up for as soon as we said I do's, right?
Yeah, it became kind of like a long to-do list of shoulds. You should have a clean house. You should have dinners ready all the time. You should have everything always stocked and never run out of things. I also do a lot of the money management, so there should be enough money for everything. There should be money to cover all of the needs of all the kids and all of the household and whatever, extracurricular activities. Like everything became my task.
Talk a little bit more too about needs. I find it interesting because you talk a lot about like needs of the kids and needs of your husband, but what about your own?
They pretty much disappeared.
Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think for a woman, or a mom, I should say, it is necessary for a little while to surrender your needs as you are taking care of a young infant, a young child. There is a period of time where there is a sacrifice, and you do have to put yourself on the back burner for a little bit because you're caring for this helpless infant that literally does need you to survive. So I think it's a natural transition that happens, but it's not meant to be where you're supposed to stay. And nobody told me that. Not that anyone was supposed to, but so I went into this servicing mode, keeping children alive, thinking that it was my duty to run this household and everything in it perfectly to keep you happy. You were also working and teaching and going to school and gone a lot. So really a lot fell on me. But I don't think we're supposed to stay in that mode as moms and wives. There is a time, though, when you do have to surrender. But the point is to come out of that as your children age. And I never did.
Well, let's rewind a little bit because I believe all the things you said are true. But I'm a little interested and curious because you talk about how this all came about when you had children. But I'm a little interested because I think I saw some tendencies, especially in the sexual realm, that your needs were put on the back burner even before the kids came about.
True. And that came really from the mindset that I was taught in this purity culture, in this religious culture, that women were meant to be servicing. They were not to have any needs. They were meant to be the givers, the nurturers, the servers, and not to have a voice, but just to be available and giving and servicing at all times. And that is what would create a happy marriage and family.
It's kind of crazy because I feel like even before we were married, there was probably a little more desire there and you felt like you had a little more needs in that area. But even just as we entered into this relationship, it triggered this contextual place where you felt like, hey, I'm here to serve.
Yes, absolutely. I feel like I really had a path for myself before we were married, and it wasn't that you took anything away from me. It was the roles handed to me, like, okay, now you went from being an individual to being a wife, and when you make that transition, here's what you have to give up and here's what you have to become.
So how do young couples that might be listening to they avoid that scenario?
I think you avoid it by recognizing that at all times in your relationship you need to be a whole person. And a whole person means that you have desires, that you have needs, and no marriage will ever meet all of your desires or all your needs. We're not talking about perfection here, but we're talking about having some ownership of you and being able to keep track of you and to be able to keep care of yourself and to be listening to you, to be knowing what those needs and desires are. And it is okay that not every need and desire is met in marriage. That's totally normal, totally acceptable. But when you completely fold in and lose track of yourself, that really will erode a marriage. And so I think it's really being able to hold on to yourself and be close to this person.
Ooh, sounds like differentiation.
Sounds like differentiation. So knowing who you are, not completely losing track of yourself, knowing how you want to develop, what you want to create, what you love to do, what your passions are, and being able to share those with a spouse. And that means you don't have to do everything together. Obviously, we love being together, but we also have separate interests that fuel us, and that's totally okay.
I mean, I think if I look back, I think that's one of the things that's really changed over the last couple of years. We really were so entwined. We talk about, being enmeshed with each other. Mm-hmm. We felt like we had to do everything together, that I couldn't have my own hobbies or desires or things that I enjoyed, because if I was doing that, I was away from you and the family. So I think that is part of it, right? Is realizing that it's an important part of differentiation is being an individual into yourself and having your own desires and wants and things that you like, and while you can support one another to it, you don't have to love it too. Like, we'll give the example. I love football.
Yes, you do.
You don't love football.
No, I do not. Well, I love live games.
Well, okay, let's not. We won't. Let's not go there because we can argue, and we don't really want to hear us argue here on this.
I bet they do.
They want us to hear us fight.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'll give you that one. Maybe you like to go to a live football game, but you do not love football like I do.
No, I do not.
In fact, you hated me for it at one time in our marriage.
I think I resented you, yes.
Yep.
Because to me, it represented that you had free time and permission to relax that I didn't have. And I blamed you because, first of all, I wasn't asking for the partnership that I needed. And also I was believing that I couldn't have that. So there was a part that was me and there was a part that was you in that pattern. But yeah, I absolutely resented that you could sit down and watch 1, 2, 3 football games. And
yeah, it always gets more over the years. She's like, you watch 25 football games. It's not even possible.
I mean,
but that's
to make it a good story. Come on.
It's like that field goal that every year the team gets back, it's further back and the weather gets worse. But we resolved this, but the resolution wasn't, you don't sit down on Saturdays or Sundays and watch football with me, really.
No.
Once in a while you'll come by.
Yeah.
But the resolution wasn't Amy falling in love with football. The resolution was Amy saying, hey, that's something that Greg likes, and I'm okay with that. And I'm going to give him some space and time to enjoy it and not make him feel guilty. And when that was freed up, it also made me free, it wasn't a needy thing anymore. It wasn't like I'm going to sit here and watch just because, despite her, because she hates me because of it. It was now I can partake of it, watch a game, maybe 2, and be okay. So
yep.
I think in this
and
example,
I think you recognized too that I also needed some free time. Yeah. I recognized it too, and you became more supportive in helping around the house and noticing
get a book,
things.
read, you know, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, what did you love to do? It became non-task oriented. It just became more partnership. But
right, and you now see things. You mop and dishes and bathroom and beds. I don't have to ask you to do them. Laundry, so forth and so on. You just step in and do.
I know. All the women are getting turned on right now.
It's possible, ladies.
Foreplay, man. Foreplay, I tell you. All right, let's get back to it. So you come into this marriage, you're thinking, I have a job now. Mm-hmm. Sex is one of the things. Yep. It's just for Greg. Yep. That's what he needs. He's got to have it. Nothing good for me. That was one of the major things that you transitioned out of when you changed your thoughts. How long did that take?
It took a while. I felt like I had so much evidence that sexual intimacy really was for you, that you wouldn't be okay without it, that you couldn't handle a no, that you would be moody or pouty or dysregulated or not able to perform at work, which then would negatively impact our family. And so it felt like a linchpin for me. Like if I don't give this thing, then all of these other things will fall. And so it was rather scary realizing that I have to have a no to have a yes, that sexuality and sexual intimacy in marriage is for both of us, that I also had needs and wants and desires. They looked different than yours. They showed up differently, but they were just as important. And I needed to listen to them and pay attention.
You often talk about, and I've heard you coach clients this way, and also some of our retreats about there's phases of getting to these places, right? You often talk, you can't just jump to this from sex is for men and now all I want is sex.
Yes.
Can you talk a little about some of the phases you went through that helped you get to where you're at today?
Yes, absolutely. I don't remember exactly what all the phases were, but let me just recount what some phases could look like. So, for example, I really didn't love my body. I really couldn't see how you were so enchanted with it. And all I could see were all of the flaws and areas that needed to be improved. And I didn't go from thinking that my body was flawed to like absolutely loving it and feeling like the erotic turn on. I went from recognizing that I have a body, and because I have a body, I get to experience life. and just noticing all the experiences that were given to me because I had a body. I could hold my kids, I could kiss them, I could be with you, I could see sunsets and sunrises and feel breezes and see, flowers and experience things that I loved. So I just noticed that like my body was a container that allowed me to experience life. And then from there, it was noticing, what did I love experiencing in this container? What did my body allow me to experience that I did love? That moved into like what kinds of touches and what kinds of interactions and what kinds of foods and what kinds of, flowers and places that I love to be and visit, and even in what kind of like physical activities. I used to punish myself with all different kinds of workouts that I hated, but I felt I had to do. And so it made this negative relationship with that. So it was even recognizing, okay, how do I like to move my body and interact with my body? And then from there, I started to be able to ask you, what do you see when you see my body? Because I knew I needed an even broader perspective. And I would ask you, what are you seeing now? And what does this look like to you? And you started to open my mind to really seeing myself in a more erotic frame.
It wasn't hard.
Taking ordinary body parts.
Making them extraordinary.
And seeing them in extraordinary ways. Seeing that meaning change in intimacy. So that really helped. And then from there, just noticing beauty in people everywhere. I used to be very afraid to notice beauty. I had been taught in the religious and purity culture not to see beauty, to look away, to avert my eyes. And this didn't mean like I was staring at people everywhere. It was just noticing what was beautiful in people and recognizing the beauty in them, helped me to see the beauty in me, the beauty around me, and just noticing that there's so much beauty. And then I started studying eroticism and learning that it was the power that helps you to feel alive and vibrant, and that the female form and figure is the symbol of eroticism. And so I started to step into the idea that I have a female form, therefore I am erotic. I am the symbol of eroticism. And, I stayed in each of these for, like several months. This wasn't like we have this thought and now we moved into it. It was working with and leaning in and finding evidence and noticing how believing these different things opened up and expanded my life. And I feel like where I'm at now is recognizing that I love my sexuality, I love my body, and I love to be the turn on. Yeah. And I didn't go from hating my body to loving to be the turn on in one swoop. It was several small steps.
I find it fascinating that for women, it's so necessary to be able to recognize and feel your body and quiet yourself. We know that in the moment, if you're going to reach arousal and also orgasm, that you need to be relaxed and be able to feel what's happening in your body. And oftentimes women get tense and can't do that. And just the most simple things I have some of my clients do, like I'll ask her to just take 10 minutes a day and sit by yourself quietly with no one else around. Close your eyes and just see if you can recognize what your body's feeling. And oftentimes that's really hard for them. And, telling them, hey, when thoughts come in and you start feeling the tasks of what you have to do, you need to shoosh those out and say thank you, but not right now. And really get to the point where you can feel what's happening to your body and understand it. And I think that's one of the key things as you recognize you have this body, and it's a symbol of eroticism, but also it's really important for you to be able to stay in it and feel it and understand it, to be able to enjoy and have pleasure.
To inhabit your body and to allow yourself the ability to embody, to be embodied, to be in the body that is such a gift for you, to allow yourself to receive those inherent pleasures, whether it's really enjoying the texture of something, the sight of something, the taste of something, the smell of something, the feel of something. all of these are about being embodied. And I think that's what intimacy asks of us too.
Yeah. It becomes really more natural for a man, I think, as we talked about before. And we've also talked about how it's so important to have a context around it for a woman, right? And the contextual meaning to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you take time to pause and try to figure out what's going on around you and how your body's reacting to it, also helps you set some context around what's going on too. And I think that helps.
Mm-hmm. So
let's talk a little bit about this, how you kind of felt like, hey, men are just greedy and needy. We talked about one of the ladies in our retreat said, you just need a hole to put it in, right? And how that kind of made me upset at the time. And I wouldn't say upset, but I got a little feisty and shot back. But what was this thought that you had around men being greedy and needy?
Well, it seemed like what I was taught, right? You have to be so careful because men can't control their arousal. Men can't control themselves in their sexuality. And so I would have to be on guard. I would have to keep myself safe. I didn't want to lose what was most virtuous. And then getting married, it would like, you have to take care of your man. They're not capable of taking care of this. This could be so damaging if it goes outside of your marriage, this power of eroticism and sexuality. And so it was constantly trying to manage what was not mine. But in that management, it really, the way that I would see it was like, oh, he's so greedy. He's so needy. Like he can't take care of this. So I have to. And yet I loved you and adored you. And those two just didn't fit together. It was like, how can I have this amazing husband and father who can do all these amazing things, and that yet I see him as like totally incompetent in this area and incapable of, taking care of himself and making capable, wise choices. And so those two just didn't fit together. And I think I struggled a long time to think, well, was what I was taught wrong? Or is there something else that's more true? Or like what is happening, and why are men portrayed or, in this way as being completely subservient to their sexuality? And can they actually manage themselves? Like I didn't know how to work around that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I thought this a couple times we were talking, and I haven't said it, but it's what we do when we are misunderstanding something is that we put these controls around them, and the thing that we fear the most, we end up making happen. So let me give you an example of this. So you feared that I wouldn't be able to manage myself, right?
Yes.
And so you did everything to control me. And when that happened and you tried to control me, I didn't have anywhere to go. I couldn't step in anywhere. I couldn't take care of or manage myself. And so I had to do something in the darkness on the side that will leave me to seem to have some control of my own sexual desires. And it came out, we talk about coming out sideways because we couldn't manage it right. But that one thing that you feared the most, you created, right? And it's hard for even me to say this right now a little bit because from our perspective, and I don't want to take this over because we said we're going to stay on you, but I just I want the women to understand this a little bit, right? Like I could never say this when the porn thing came up at first because I felt like I had done so much harm that anything I did that pointed that wasn't me was the wrong thing. I think we've come to realize that this is just what you said. Because you were so worried about it and trying to manage it, that you created the perfect environment for it to grow. And in that perfect environment, we just let it grow. And that doesn't take ownership of what I did. The choice I made was wrong. I did it absolutely the wrong way. And so that I didn't dismiss the ownership of it, but I just want the women out there to know that sometimes when we get so controlling in this area, we create the perfect petri dish to grow what we fear the most.
I think as we try to manage fears instead of directly confront and face them, we do end up creating them.
It was like we talked about earlier. I was going to bring it up and I didn't, but I think it's the same with the amount or the need to service my husband by having sex because it's for him. When you do that, you do out of what we call duty sex, out of duty, and men know it, right? We think it's great and we think like, hey, this is awesome, I'm getting laid. But afterwards, there's such a lack of connection, and it's the opposite void of feeling so empty. And then you look at the person that you love and care about more than anything in this world, and you think, I just took something from her.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the most awful feeling in the whole entire world. So again, here you are thinking you're managing even the frequency or need, and you're giving what I need. And so that's what your job was. But in the end, you're creating this distance and this neediness and this emptiness because it's out of duty.
Yeah, we were co-creating that together. But I think anytime you service or, well, let me say it this way. I think when you don't own your own self and your own sexuality, it will be problematic in intimacy. And it does take some work to own yourself, to be honest about what you desire and what you want to create, to own your flaws, to own where you have shortcomings, to own where you're insecure, where you're anxious. All of those things are really vulnerable to own, but they actually create the possibility for real intimacy, because intimacy is, again, about being able to be seen and be known. And if you're willing to reveal yourself and to know your spouse, then you are going to create intimacy. And all of these ideas that I had about you being needy, or men being needy and greedy and pouty and not capable, and these were all keeping me from actually knowing you and what was actually true for you. And so it was blocking intimacy, and it was blocking it for me because I moved into just accommodating you instead of owning myself, knowing myself, being in tune with myself. And again, that undermines intimacy.
Vulnerability is scary.
Yes, it is.
It is not comfortable.
Nope.
But it's the only way to get us to what we really want and desire, right? It's like the craziest thing. You see it out there, like that's the thing I want and desire most. And all the crap that's in the way that we think we're trying to get there. And really the simplicity of just being vulnerable and letting your spouse know who you are, what you desire, what you care about, and being okay with them either thinking it's great or thinking it sucks. And it's okay either way because you're okay with yourself. But man, that process of saying, and I think it is a process, right? We talk about little by little, you talk about the phases of getting okay with your body. I think it's the phases of vulnerability too. I don't think we woke up one day and we're just open and I spilled my guts to you about everything I've thought or desired.
Oh goodness, no.
I let into a little bit of it and I opened up and I found safety in there from your reactions and my reactions, like even when you disagreed with me. And so it is possible to do step at a time. And that's really how you do it, is start opening up just a step at a time. Be a little braver.
A little bit every day.
Let your spouse know a little more of you and what you think, and it will continue to grow.
I think a lot of our intimacy really does start in mental and emotional ways. And we are very nuanced, complex, complicated people. And as we are willing to own all of those different complexities within us, all of those different parts and feelings and thoughts and beliefs, it does create the foundation to be able to establish intimacy. And then that is taken into the physical realm, where when you are okay in your body, then you can actually share it with another. And I wasn't okay in my body and I wasn't okay with yours. So it was a double whammy.
Any resources you want to talk about that helped you get there?
A lot of resources. I think Come As You Are by Emily Nagoski is a great one. It addresses female sexuality and eroticism and talks about, brakes and accelerators, what moves you closer, what moves you farther away, talks about context and meanings. She talks about understanding how our physical arousal is different than our mental and emotional arousal. So a lot of great things in there. I think Replenish by Tammy Hill is another great one to understand your body and to understand, how it works.
If you were to rate those two and you were to say, okay, on the one end, it's maybe like milk and we're just getting started here, and it's not shocking to the system. And one end is like, I'm taking the reading meaty stuff. Where do you place those two resources in there? If someone's kind of new to learning their sexuality, you don't want to shock them to death, right? So where do you place those?
I think I would start with Come As You Are. It's really like a step by step introduction to women's sexuality. I think I would start there. And Tammy Hill is more hands-on, like in actual the doing, more techniques and so forth. Although she does have a lot of great theory in there too, but I think it's more technical.
I love you, Tammy.
Also, I think Esther Perel has a lot of really amazing work in understanding how to reconcile the domestic and erotic, how to understand some of the complexities of how emotional and physical intimacy intertwine. If you really want to go in depth, you go to David Schnarch in Passionate Marriage.
But that's like a lot of theory.
Yeah, that's some pretty heavy in-depth stuff. Also, Dr. Jennifer Finlayson-Fife has some great courses and podcasts.
Love Jennifer too.
Yes, she's amazing. So that, and just learning, like giving myself grace. I think we think that we're going to change, like have this aha and then just change. And you may have the aha that shows you the next step, and that can be really powerful, but it still takes some time to program that into your being, to program that into your neural pathways, to program that into your nervous system. So even if you have that aha, like, oh my gosh, my body is actually quite beautiful, it still may take another several months to really incorporate that and be able to step into your body. And that's totally normal.
What's this? Do you ever fall back into those things?
Yes, I think it's impossible not to.
So even when you're there, there's going to be moments that you fall back into those old thought patterns, right?
Yes. I think what is helpful, though, you recognize you can get out, and you know the path out, and you know that it's a real path. Like it actually works.
You've seen the fruits of it before.
Yes. Nobody ever does everything all the time. Nobody ever always or nevers. We are quite human.
That's right. All right. So say we have some of our listeners that have gone through more of this transformation, and they're pretty good with their own bodies and sexuality. And what would be a resource on the meatier side that you would send them to help them take them up to the next level?
For those that are ready to understand more of the actual physical parts of their body, omgyes.com has 3 different courses on how to understand how your outer genitalia works, how your inner genitalia works, and how toys and different things like that work. There's 3 different seasons, and basically what they've done is interview and bring in, I think, 30,000 women and asked them, like, what works for you? What are some of your tips and techniques, and what do you find very pleasurable? And so they've gathered all of these resources and put them in these series. They are with live women, and so you can choose your level of involvement. I will say at the bottom, there's there's different levels of demonstration. So you can get like the written demonstration, like a demonstration on your hand of the different techniques, or you can actually have a short little video clip of the demonstration. And I will say that those are completely naked or nude, however you see that. And so you can choose your level of engagement and what you're comfortable with there. But there is a lot that you can learn about how to be able to actually stimulate and pleasure your body with your spouse, or you can learn on your own.
Awesome. Let's go back and just to recap before we finish here.
Okay.
So some of the major things that you struggled with was you thought sex was just for men.
Yep.
You thought sex was work.
Yep.
There was no pleasure involved for it.
Yep.
It was one of your tasks.
Yep. Another one of my many domestic tasks.
You thought, I don't even have any desire.
I didn't. Well, because you can't have desire when you think it's a task.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You thought men were sexually needy and greedy.
Yes, I did.
You also thought maybe you couldn't say no.
oh yeah, because if I did, then you wouldn't be able to function, and then your functioning would affect your work, which would affect our family, which would affect me, would affect the kids. And so it felt like, again, like the linchpin that was going to cause everything to collapse.
Right. And we know that if there is no hell no, there is no
hell yes.
So if you're just doing it and you don't think you have a no, then you're really not saying yes either. So it's important to be able to say no.
Absolutely must have a no. And you absolutely must have a yes. And on both sides of this, I had to learn what my yeses were. And also for a lot of women who are lower desire or responsive desire, responsive means that you have to be in a sexual context for a while, which a lot of women are. So if that's the way you are, you're 100% normal. Welcome. But often there is a maybe like, well, let's try and see. Let's see if I can move into this context and headspace and, emotional and physical space. I don't know yet. And that's a totally valuable answer.
And on the guy's side, you got to be ready for this, right? And be okay with yourself, because when she says no, you can't go into that silly, pouty, moody, disgusting place that we go, and you can't pursue and go after her. So that's the thing I had to learn, to give her space to be able to say no and be okay with it. So that's important for our side. And used to think that your body had to look a certain way before it was sexy.
You always thought it.
Wrong.
You always thought it was sexy, but
in fact,
I definitely did not.
One time I got in a lot of trouble. Let me tell you, I'm gonna open up here a little bit and tell you what trouble I got in.
Yeah, what trouble did you get in?
One time I told Amy, and it didn't go over very well, that I'd rather you be fat and happy.
Oh, yes.
And then be skinny and grumpy and miserable because you were trying so hard to get to a certain weight and a certain shape. Then it was just like miserable. And it was miserable. I love you just the way you are. I love all the extra things to hold on to and to play with. And you're like, yeah, that's gross. And I got myself in trouble. So don't say that, guys. But it's still true. I would rather have you fat and happy than skinny and grumpy and moody.
Well, I think what you mean is not really about size, but that content with my body and able to embody or be in my body is right. What you would have preferred. Not that you were measuring any sizes.
Right. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. All right. Any last words of wisdom for our female friends here?
I think just recognizing what it is you're believing that's holding you back. And go ahead and take ownership of that. And take one little step at a time. One little, how can I move the needle just a little bit? You don't have to move it all the way yet. Just take that next step and focus on why. Why would you want to do this? And my whys for me included being able to integrate and know myself, know my sexuality and integrate it into me. My whys included being able to be connected and to share what marriage is actually about. Marriage is the only relationship that includes this physical intimacy. And if I was going to be married, I didn't want to be roommates. I really wanted to.
We did that for a sec.
I really wanted to have the intimacy that was part of marriage. I wanted to be okay with my body. I wanted to be able to experience joy and pleasure. I wanted to see sex as a gift, not as work. I wanted to be able to see you as capable, as your sexuality, as goodness. So, and a lot of these, I didn't believe at first. I didn't have evidence for. I didn't have proof for. I wanted to have a hell yes. I wanted to not be on the defensive always and to be able to move into, how can I want this for myself, for us, for our family, for our children? Like, I really, really wanted a marriage that was intimate and thriving and connected. And that meant leaning into some parts that were really uncomfortable and believing some things that I didn't yet believe.
We're here to help. Please go and like and subscribe to this podcast. That will help us. But also join us on LangfordLifeCoaching.com. That's LangfordLifeCoaching.com. A lot of resources there. Some of the books, all the books that Amy mentioned and more are there. Mm-hmm. We have a link to some apps and other things that are good resources for you. Mm-hmm. So go read our blog. And then most importantly, if you need help, we're here. go click on a free consult, and we'd love to sit down with you and have a chat with you, either Amy or myself, about how you can get through some of the things you're stuck on and make a better marriage.
You don't have to stay stuck. There is hope. There is possibility. There are ways. And I really love watching couples come back alive. I think that's the part of intimacy that we don't talk about enough. People get caught up on like positions and orgasms and different things like that. And that's all wonderful and great. But when you watch the light come back into each spouse's eyes, when you watch a marriage feel alive again, when you watch that connectedness that is so joyful, and that's what is really rewarding about doing this type of work.
Yep. Until next time, keep undressing your intimacy. We'd love to see you back next week. Have a great week.
Bye-bye.